Hey guys, this is P.M.R.Bonez88, and October is over and Halloween is over and done, but that doesn't mean I'm going to stop reviewing horror movies. So today for my next horror slasher movie review is Freddy vs. Jason, a dream demon stalker and a hockey mask killer colliding, fighting each other, titans clashing, slicing and dicing, massacring, slashing. This movie was actually my least favorite, but we got to see the two fighting at each other. It took them like a decade to bring those two horror icons together, and unfortunately ever since Jason Goes to Hell, that's what's supposed to take place, but with Wes Craven's New Nightmare showed up and Jason X, so they saved the project, or like moved the project aside after those two icons showed up. And then later on in 2003 was Freddy vs. Jason. So Robert Englund returned to play as none other than Freddy Krueger, and Kane Hodder, however, he was supposed to return to play as Jason Voorhees because he played Jason Voorhees the most than the others. According to Kane Hodder, he said that no one didn't call him, didn't give him what was the project, so he was replaced by Ken Krazitter, so he was the next Jason Voorhees. So this movie starts out with Freddy introducing to himself, like reintroduces and talks about his back storyline of how he became this Springwood slasher, and then all of a sudden got all burned and gruesome. And then we come to the next part with where we see Jason stalking and hunting down this girl back in Camp Crystal Lake, but all of it was just a dream, and we see is her mother, Freddy Krueger disguising as Jason's mother. So Freddy brings Jason to life to like take him to Elm Street to punish the kids, and where he got into Elm Street, which that seems really far to spring from Jason walking up there. It would take him nearly like for a week, or is it 2 weeks? I don't know. I'm not good at miles and mileage or days, whatever. It's a movie, so deal with it. So Jason is now in Springwood up on Elm Street, and where we introduce the house to the old house 1428 Elm, and we see is the three girls, Catherine Isabel, which we all know her in Ginger Snaps, the Destiny's Child singer Kelly Rowland, and the main character Monica Keena. So these three girls had their own girls' night, and until the two boys show up just to hang out, and Trey and Gabe go upstairs, have their couple time, and then all of a sudden Jason just pops up out of nowhere, just like, what did he like teleport from outside the house to it's upstairs in the room? And there was no way that Jason could at least just got in the house unless he just snuck up there like very, very quiet, just not making any noises. So anyways, Jason just starts like killing him, stabbing him multiple times like he was using his machete just like a plunger, like getting everything out of the toilet. And then all of a sudden that wasn't good enough, so he just like picked up the mattress of the bed and just like squishes him like he's a Thanksgiving turkey sandwich. I should say this was a pretty epic Jason kill death. Out of all the deaths that Jason ever done, he can create all these kinds of deaths, and this was the perfect epic death scene ever. A mattress sandwich. That sounds yummy, doesn't it? So anyways, all the kids went to the police station asking questions of what really happened, but they all think it was just Freddy Krueger, but nobody doesn't want to mention about the guy's name, because otherwise it'll bring him back just to remember or to hunt everyone down. So Laura just like tries to remember who was it, like what was the name, and then all of a sudden it pops out of her and it said Freddy. At this point that she was already dreaming, that everything she saw drips of blood coming down from the ceiling, and then a little girl was like sitting there, and then it turns around and we see her like her eyes were like cut out, And up to the one scene that she comes from the station to back to her old house, and Freddy just pops out of nowhere. She wakes up and everything, she was back at the station. And the next day, where Laurie like goes to school and meets up with her two friends, somehow she talks to them. She goes all bursting in tears, crying hysterically, and all of a sudden Mark shows up and explains to her who it was, and Freddy just came back in their nightmares, but literally freaked out even more. Then Will comes to the rescue and shows up, and all of a sudden Laurie just like passes out, and then they left until the principal showed up. So Laurie was sent down to the nurse's room until she was fast asleep, and we see a revealing of an image of Freddy. And then we see up to the one scene where Kia just like reads up on the magazine of plastic surgeon. His gloves like comes out on her nose and just says, "Got your nose." It was all just a dream. But realizing that his powers weren't really back, like not fully restored. He couldn't even kill not anybody, not a bit. So the one who did most of the killings were Jason, because Jason is a beast, and because throughout the movies Jason is like the main character. Well, practically not really the main character, but even so, Freddy did kill one, which was Mark. That was the only thing he just killed, that's it, and nothing else. So just to let you know and give you guys a heads up, if none of you didn't see this movie, really want to see, you don't want to get spoiled, don't watch this video. But those of you did, if you want to keep on watching my review, so go on, continue. Just giving you a little heads up, that's all. Up to the party scene where we see Gib all drunk and just like walk down the woods, and we see is her dead boyfriend Trey just like going across the cornfield. And up to that point where we see the shadow of Freddy, and that point she went from the barn to the boiler room. So Freddy taunts her and like hunts her down just to freak her out, and until where Gib was like hiding in one of the lockers, Freddy finds her, gets ready to kill her, until guess who beats him to the punch? Jason. So up in that point, Freddy got really pissed off. He did a favor for Jason, and technically I think choosing Jason was a bad move for Freddy. So while Freddy is like all pissed off and now he really wants to get revenge on Jason, Jason just starts killing everyone during the cornfield party, slashing them while he was totally burned, and the alcohol just like gets out all the fire, takes it all out of him, and just like starts chopping them, slicing all the kids into itty bitty little pieces. Will takes Laurie back home, but Laurie didn't want to return home. Will tried to explain of what happened that night, and during where Will was going to meet up with Laurie, he saw her father killing her own mother, though that's what he thought. But then all of a sudden, Laurie's father just like gets her out of the car and then starts choking Will. Laurie runs away from her father, goes back in the house, but Laurie wants to know why was Will in the psychiatric hospital and what really happened to her mother. Her father tried to explain, but not thoroughly. Although that she started to freak out, so Laurie just runs away from her father and then reunites with Will, and then returning to Mark's house. By the time they got into Mark's house, somehow he was already fast asleep, and then Freddy was starting to torment him, but he wanted to pass on the message to let him know that he is back.
Back for vengeance.
So now they're in huge trouble. Now they got a deal is how to get rid of Freddy and how to get rid of Jason. Both of the elements, however, that Freddy died by fire and Jason died by water, but two elements doesn't even work for them. Especially for Jason. Jason's not really afraid of water. He just drowned by water, so it's impossible just to bring both of these elements and killing them at the same time. So clearly they're not safe awake or asleep. Laurie had an idea. There's a way to stay awake. So what they want to find is one of those hypnotist cells. They go back to the psychiatric hospital, those hypnotist cells, just to stay awake and to not to get killed by Freddy. But to avoid Jason, that's another story. Even for Jason, he's a brutal mass force of nature. There is no way you can kill this guy. They try stabbing him, done that. Shooting at him, already done that. Burning him, did that too. Drowning, it did work, but only for a bit. He did came back, so he's not afraid of water. But in this movie, he is. Even electricity didn't work for him. Everything they try to do, nothing works. Except for the cryogenic prison, which was in Jason X in the far distant future. It froze him for a while, but when you get him out of there, he melts and he comes back. So once again, still indestructible. Freeberg just like decides to have a little smoke for a bit, getting high and all, but somehow a caterpillar Freddy shows up, shows him a bong. Now, I don't know if Freeberg was either dreaming or he was hallucinating. Unfortunately, actually, it does count, because if you like either getting high or you're drunk and you see things that you're all hallucinating, then Freddy can just come out to, like, no matter if you're like high or you're drunk. So no matter what you do, Freddy will always come after you. So what Freddy did, he like possessed Freeberg, so he got the tranquilizer, so that way he could get revenge on Jason. He took 2 of them so that way he would fall asleep. So that's where the battle begins. In the dream world, we see Freddy disguising as Jason's mother, fooling him, but then all of a sudden Jason realized that his mother did not exist at all. At that point, Jason got really pissed off. So those two went head to head at each other, slicing and dicing and biting. My favorite part was where Freddy just like made Jason into like a pinball machine, creating like a small pinball game of Jason. Jason was the pinball. The boiler room was his like game room. It was everything. That was my favorite. You gotta admit, it made me laugh. So this movie was actually a horror / action / comedy. It was technically much more of an action and less of a horror film. But at least it was a comedy. At least that didn't mess it up. They had 2 fight scenes, the dream world and then up to when they went to Camp Crystal Lake, climactic clash of between evil versus evil. None of them didn't win. Well, none of them cannot die. So basically, this movie is only about these 2 horror icons that just really cannot die. But up to that ending where Freddy just like picks up Jason's machete, gets ready to kill Laurie and Will, but then up to the final blow, Jason just like stabs Freddy's own glove, goes back into the lake, and then Laurie finishes him off by chopping off his head, and Jason thought he was victorious, takes Freddy's head, but then after the end, Freddy just winked. So which means nobody won. So after done talking about this movie, all this is about is just these 2 horror icons fighting each other. They really just cannot die. Nobody can't die. Even if you put like Pinhead and Michael, they just can't die. Well, if you like chain him up of Michael and just like ripping him apart into pieces, then that's the end. But he will come back somehow. And if Chucky versus Leprechaun, once again, none of them cannot die. Chucky will just like come back to a different soul of a body. He could just possess another Chucky doll. So just to rate this film, for Freddy vs. Jason, I'm gonna have to give this a 73 out of 100. For a movie like this, I wish they could have just like concentrate much more of Freddy and Jason, just to concentrate on those 2 horror icon killers, and the victims, they could be just side characters. But at least we saw them fighting each other, like fighting each other, bashing each other, smashing, slicing, and dicing each other. That was what it was all about. But like I said, this movie, it was only about these climactic version of those 2 that just really cannot die. But it was a good movie. It's my least favorite, so I love this movie. Don't care what other people think. And I do own this movie on Blu-ray and DVD. And this is P.M.R.Bonez88's signing off. His saying is, peace!